welcome to another episode of Digital Days Gaming presents Not a Weekly Show. My name is Dave Hunt, and that is not Michael Swick. That is Chandler Wood, editor-in-chief of PlayStationLifestyles.com, right? .org?
Yep. PlayStation.net.
.net.
Even
okay, see, I messed it all up. It used to be .org, right?
.net. I something.
All right, so PlayStationLifestyles.net. We'll make sure that if this is your first time seeing Chandler, that anywhere you can find him, it will be in the show notes. Chandler and I have known each other for 5-6 years?
Many years, basically as long as Destiny's been a thing, it feels like, yeah.
So, and if you haven't listened before, about 6 months ago, we just looked it up. So like in June, I had Chandler on. He joined us for a little bit of a look back, what turned into a look back of Destiny, which I don't think neither one of us intended that to be, but that's kind of what it turned into.
Entirely, yeah. It's supposed to kind of start out as that and then go into looking forward to Beyond Light and the new announcements and Witch Queen and all that, but we ended up spending a long time on the history of Destiny.
Yeah. Which made a great discussion. We got awesome feedback on that as well, so that was fun. And then obviously, many of you know, like I love and enjoy playing Destiny, and I have friends that love and enjoy playing Destiny as well, and Chandler is one of them. And he's also I met him in my previous regime. We met and we both covered PlayStation heavily. He still does. It is your full-time job, right?
Yeah. Not that it, my wife's bringing home the bacon for me, but she enables me to do this full time without needing to worry too much about it.
Yeah. So, like I said, you can find everything to follow Chandler or where he, and see his work. Will be in all of our show notes. Along with in our show notes is all of the information for us. Digital Days Gaming is typically a weekly show. We've released 64 pieces of content. And we are on all podcast services that are available. And we fixed our issues on Spotify, which has been weird. But needless to say, if you're listening to us for the first time, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. And that helps tremendously to get more eyes on the show, as well as having someone like Chandler on the show and exposing us to hopefully more audience and other people and growing our community. Chandler interacts periodically in our Facebook groups and through our Twitters and stuff, like when he can.
Try to.
Or when he has something to say.
I get tired of social media throughout the day. So, by the end of the day, I'm sometimes just like, all right, I'm done. I can't.
It's one of the things of like being, I guess, an editor-in-chief is that your life is, there is a percentage of your life dedicated to social media. So.
I'm on Twitter all day.
All right, so the goal of today's show is to we hinted at this months ago, and I planned on doing it sooner, but I think waiting helped a little bit. But we're going to give our impressions of Destiny 2 Beyond Light and going into, which is essentially the kickoff of Year 4. And we're going to break down some stuff of what our thoughts, and we're going to talk about the state of the game and some of the things that are going on. We did get we're recording this on a Thursday, which is after our most recent weekly update. And we're about, just from a time frame, we're about 2 weeks away from the end of the first season of Year 4. 3 weeks, roughly. It's going to start like February 10th or February 11th, and they really haven't started talking about the seasonal, what that next season's content is going to be. They're spending a lot of time talking about reward structure, and we know some stuff that's coming in the season, but we don't really know what the basis of the season yet is. So I'm just kind of setting the time frame for that. But we're going to start with Destiny 2 Beyond Light, and the first thing that I want to talk about is the story, the narrative of the game, and where they've gone. So when you log in, this is the first time in multiple years that I did not take launch day off work, because I was like, there's gonna be server problems. There's always server problems, and if memory serves me right, there was server problems, so, queues and things. But eventually, that aside, everybody was able to get in and play, and you were introduced quite quickly to Europa, which is a new destination. And it's where you're introduced to Variks, and there's something kind of crazy going on. And I don't know if you want to go from there or tell me what you were thinking about just that structure-wise, because for me, it had a lot of ties to D1, to Destiny 1.
Yeah, I mean, as we go across a lot of the story, you're going to see a lot of the callbacks to D1, and what it really felt like they were trying to do is really pull back that lore and that narrative and the story that they wanted to tell long before Activision kind of got their hands on things. You know, I know there's a lot of dispute going on, and Bungie's never going to officially come out and say, yes, Activision changed things, or no, they didn't. You know, what pieces of it changed because of that. But, you know, we'll get to this eventually too, but like The Crow was originally in the very first, I think, D1 reveal trailer way back in the day.
Europa was too. Like, I mean,
Europa
like
we've seen
Europa concept art. We've seen what we believe to be like alleged, you know, air quoted cut content of, but I think at the same time it's trying to weigh both of those things. Like, I don't think that you're wrong in stating that Activision cut some things out, but I also don't think that, you know, like Bungie had this dream, you know, like they were shooting for the stars and then they settled for the clouds because of what they wanted.
I think it's not even about settling necessarily as much as it is just design and scope of a game changes over time. And I think that the path diverged from what they originally had envisioned, and it went another way. And that wasn't necessarily a bad way, but they're kind of calling back to a lot of that, and they're revisiting a lot of those storylines and a lot of those things that they're kind of saying, okay, we have this in our footnotes from what we had concepted for Destiny 1. Why don't we go back and revisit that? Why don't we pull that back into play here a little bit and think about, like, let's explore more. What if you're allied with the Fallen? Because they've kind of teased that throughout the years, and let's explore more the Exo Stranger, and let's explore more, you know, this character, the Crow, and now we've got a really interesting new way of doing that by giving you this character that not only is he now the Crow, kind of as he was originally envisioned in those early trailers, but it's now even more complicated than that, given the events of Forsaken and all of that. So it's almost kind of allowed them to tell that story in a more interesting way than they even could have done at the beginning.
Yeah, I almost feel like the last 2 or 3 years, and I was having this conversation even with my wife the other day when she listens to me rambling about video games, that like when Destiny 1 launched, like one of the things it had against it is like people were expecting like a Halo type story, and it didn't deliver that. And like maybe Taken King took a step in the direction of it, but Destiny 1's story was always like, well, I don't even know really why I'm doing what I'm doing. And Destiny, but like Destiny 1 had a much better like gameplay loop and I guess end game things for, you know, for hardcore players. And then Destiny 2 came out and had what I consider like the Red War story. Like, I consider that to be like a really great story. It has now been like pushed over into almost nothing with what the direction they've been taking, but their storytelling and narrativeness has gotten extremely better, while the reward system and the hardcore player base is saying you're not giving us enough stuff to do. So it's almost like they can't have both. Like, I think they're having a really hard time being able to tell a really, really cool story, but then also have a rich, loot-driven endgame challenging concept.
Yeah, they're what they used to do, and what they still do to a big extent, is lore. They tell the story through lore as opposed to kind of a more linear narrative structure. And what they've been doing a lot more and a lot better is more of a linear narrative structure and evolving the world to... I really, really love the way they're doing that, evolving the world to keep up with the narrative structure, like saving Saint 14 and you know, all those little things, and then this season, you know, saving the Crow, which I think there's going to be some weird hiccups with that.
Yeah, they talked about that a little bit today with how that's going to work. But I agree, like, not that, you know, other companies can do it, but the ability of, like, so they introduced, and we talked about it in June, they introduced like the Destiny content vault, where they took over almost half their game and put it away. But they were able to weave that into the story, like to where the darkness took over these areas, and that's why we were being called to Europa, and now we can't go to those areas. They're condemned, like there are no travel zones, and they were able to kind of weave that into the story. And then as you progress through some of the Beyond Light stuff post the world's first raid completion, and doing some of the exotic quests for like the Lament, the exotic sword, and finding out that the Bray family, he is technically the gunsmith. Like some of that stuff is just like crazy.
Yeah, that quest stuff. I was so happy to see that kind of stuff delivered more in game and less, oh, I need to go dig this up in lore cards and on armor lore pieces. I love the expanded lore of the Destiny universe, but I really wish that crucial story elements were not relegated to like, oh, this hunter helmet has this crucial story element that you need to understand the game and the narrative and the stuff that's going on right now, but I don't play my hunter that often. I'm a Titan, so how am I supposed to even know about this piece of lore that's over here, let alone a casual player who's, you know, never in their lives gonna look at a lore tab.
They're gonna hit L2 or hit a trigger button on a legendary armor thing that they initially got, and it was like a stat roll like 48, and they got rid of it.
Yeah, they're just not gonna. If a player like me isn't going to go through and do that, and I'll fully admit I have not gone through and read every new bit of lore and every new piece of lore on the armor and stuff like that, and as much as it's something that I previously kind of have done and tried to keep up with, but if I'm not going to do that, if only the most hardcore of people are going to go through and dig through that stuff and kind of understand all that stuff, then the narrative needs to be delivered in game, which they're doing a great job at doing now. Beyond Light especially, I feel like it's done an excellent job at delivering that story and more interesting lore and more interesting kind of pseudo-linear narrative. I've really been enjoying.
How do you feel about what people are referring to as like and I think we talked about this briefly before, but like the drip feeding of content, like making like a reset like every 2 weeks, like important. Like, so just this last reset, we got the mission to start being able to acquire Hawkmoon random rolls, which had a really cool kind of, it sounds like it has actually a really cool story, and I didn't realize this right off the bat, but apparently the voiceover wasn't working.
Oh,
or
really?
isn't there's no, yeah, like, so they had that in like a known issue of like the Harbinger mission that we did this week to begin to acquire random rolled Hawkmoons. Like, there's supposed to be some narrative being told in there, and the voiceovers aren't working.
There's something we can talk about soon enough too, is the number of bugs since Beyond Light's release too. But I personally really enjoy it because I'm the type of person that enjoys I enjoy serialized TV, where I always remember back to when I was watching Lost. So from the years of 2006 to 2012, whatever it was, Lost was the big show, and watching that week by week, and coming to work at that time, I worked at the Musician's Friend Guitar Center call center, and coming into work and talking with friends about the latest episode of Lost and what we saw, and watching it week over week over the course of like 22 weeks, whatever, and then having the summer break and then getting back into it each season. And you have all these lore discussions, and you have these theories and theory crafting and building this community around it. And it's why in a lot of ways I don't like binge mode TV, where they're like, okay, here's 10 episodes of something, blam, watch it all in a weekend, and then it's done, and you don't get to digest it episode by episode.
You like the Disney Plus structure, not the Netflix structure.
I love the Disney Plus structure. I love looking forward to, like, all right, new WandaVision coming out tomorrow. Yeah. You know, we watch that, and I think it's a lot more interesting. Otherwise, I spend a Saturday watching the whole thing, and then I essentially forget about it by the time it's done. Whereas, again, something like Lost, I can remember like every episode and every story beat of Lost and going through that whole thing, because I consumed that slowly and repeatedly over the course of 6 years, week after week after week, rewatching seasons to kind of come back into things and stuff like that. And so when you apply that to something like Destiny, again, it's not a game where a game comes out and you play it and you beat it in a week or a weekend. You know, maybe you'll
you walk away from it.
Exactly.
Like,
you'll burn through it.
Like a one and done, like a Spider-Man or a God of War or an Uncharted or Last of Us.
Yeah.
Where like there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end.
And exactly. And then you're done, and it's a game that takes, you know, anywhere from, depending on the game, 6 hours to 20 hours, but however long that is, once you're done, unless you want to go back and rewatch it again or replay it again, I mean. You know, maybe get the platinum trophy, but even there you get the platinum and you're done. Destiny is one of the only games that I've gotten the platinum trophy on, and I continue to play afterwards. And I continue to have it installed and everything. And I love that ability to kind of jump in and not feel required to play a ton of Destiny content. I can jump in. Oh, it's Tuesday reset. Oh, this new mission came up. Oh, cool. I can hop in and I can play for an hour or two, knock out a few things, and then go off and play.
If you don't play the next 5 or 6 days, it's not a big deal.
It's not. It's fine. Yeah, I don't need to engage with it all the time, and I really like that structure of not needing to. There's stuff in it that you can do if you're a PvP player. There's Crucible. If you like PvE, you can rerun a bunch of stuff, and there's that grind in there for people that do want to continually come back to it. And occasionally I do come back for those things as well when I'm feeling like I need kind of a surge of Destiny. Mm-hmm. But I also don't feel
I think the gameplay mechanics help with that too. Like anytime you're, I mean, arguably, and most people have heard me say this, for years, like it's mechanically the best shooter on the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it just feels good to play, and that PS5 upgrade. I mean, that's something we don't have on the list here to talk about, but that PS5 upgrade is
or just a next gen upgrade, and essentially sorry Chandler, I'm multi-platform now. Okay.
right.
No, I mean in general, like the ability of like the field of view slider, the frames, like those are the two things for me. Like we've both played on PC. We've both played on PC builds prior to the games coming out at events, and just the ability to have that field of view and to realize how much that is, and then to have like a true 4K support, and then the 60 frames, like 60 frames a second, and the load times.
The load times, yeah. One day I hope they kind of lean into maybe adding a few of the PS5 specific features, the 3D audio processing, and the haptic feedback and triggers and stuff like that, but even without those, I think I wrote up a whole review just on the PS5 version alone, just because it felt like such a different game to jump into and play.
Especially something that they did that I don't think enough companies get credit for, but they did it for no cost.
Yeah,
like there's no cost at all for Xbox players or PlayStation players. And so like that, that was huge. But so in terms of like the destination, like the coolest thing that I think is happening on Europa is obviously dynamic weather.
Oh,
like the snowstorms, and they look even better in with the next gen upgrade. I haven't played it. Actually, I haven't felt the need to play it on my PC because of being able to play it on the Series S and on the PS5. And then PS5 is where a majority of my clan mates are, and people that I've made over the last couple of years, like you. To play the game on. And
that's saying a lot about that next gen version, because a lot of people who played on PC are like, I can't go back, I can't touch it on console again because PC's too good.
Yep. And then there are some people that were primarily PC that are now able to play on both, and the cross save functionality has been huge for everybody. I mean, you've used it with Stadia, I've used it with PC, PlayStation, Xbox. And now the rumors of not rumors, but they have essentially confirmed that cross-play is coming. I think they said by the end of this year.
Yeah, sometime 2021. Yeah, it's kind of their goal.
So like that would be huge. Like if you can get a game like Call of Duty's been able to accomplish it. But like that's like obviously like multiplayer driven, but the possibility of like me playing a game with doing a raid with you, like if I'm on Xbox and you're on PlayStation, and then two people are on PC, and like that sounds like super amazing and super intriguing to me, to where it truly won't matter where you're playing.
Yeah, all those LFG groups that are like, hey, I'm looking for one extra person on PS5 or PS4, at the time PS4, and they'd be like, oh no, sorry, I'm a PC player. Mm-hmm. And be able to open that up completely is that's going to be amazing, and really I think help bolster and bring the community together.
Yeah. So some of the other stuff, like Europa it's a pretty big destination in terms of scope. Now I don't really feel like there's as much. A lot of people were kind of comparing it to the Dreadnought from Destiny 1, and I don't feel like it has the depth that the Dreadnought had.
Yeah, in terms of secrets and explorability, I haven't felt the desire to like go off and explore the seedy little corners of Europa for any.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm there.
reason.
I'm there to accomplish certain things, and then I leave.
Yeah.
I
But I
think that
really
they're-
like the
go ahead.
destination. I think
Yeah,
they
yeah,
did
yeah.
a really good job at making it look, in certain circumstances, you get the clear weather with the sun shining and this bright white kind of glistening snow, and it looks really serene and peaceful. And then within minutes, all of a sudden, it's dark and gray and this huge storm, and it feels like this really, really threatening environment. I love how it kind of shifts back and forth through that. And then how they also worked in
The facilities, like the Braytech facilities and stuff, like they're just
yeah,
super
and
cool
the
looking.
Vex, the whole Vex
Yeah.
area too. Like the way they were able to work all that in together and make it all feel kind of seamless and like it's all working together, and it works narratively too because Braytech was built there because of the Vex Tech, and the Vex Tech is there because of the Vex experiments going on with Bray and all that. So, I think it's a really good destination.
And then obviously with that came Stasis, which whether Bungie wants to call it or not, it's ice.
Cosmic ice, yeah. Space ice.
So it's a completely new element, and it's a new element that's been added to the game. I am still a little annoyed or agitated. I was hoping that we would get more than like one weapon that used stasis, like in terms of as an actual element.
I was hoping for that too, but when I look at it from a narrative perspective, it wouldn't make sense yet. So what I'm hoping is that it starts trickling out in future seasons, and it's kind of like, oh, the Foundries have gotten their hands on the darkness powers and are now infusing them into the weapons. So now you get stasis infused weapons, because I don't know that it would make sense to right away start getting stasis infused weapons. But then again, that's what writers are for. They could figure out a way to work that into the game if they wanted to.
But right off the bat, I guess like we'll talk a little bit about what people are already like having a little bit of problem with. It kind of weaves into the state of the game, and I don't know how much you're messing with PvP or not PvP in terms of. I think my playtime is much less than it used to be, and I don't really think that has to do with the state of Destiny. I just think it has to do with like where I'm at with video games at the current time.
State of you.
Yeah. It's definitely a little irritating to get frozen in the Crucible.
Yeah, and they have done some really good work on it, and I appreciate the kind of Swift-ish work that they've done on mitigating a lot of that. You know, they pulled back some of the freeze times, they mitigated the hunters, the shatter dive, and then they're going to be looking at the Titan Behemoth next.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's been pretty fast because we're only like 70 days from like when this got into the game.
That's true.
So I mean, overall, like it feels like it's been longer than that, but the game did come out November 10th. The first time that people had stasis abilities was November 10th, and it's January like 20th or whatever it is right now, 21st. So January 21st. So that is there. I don't think it necessarily needs to be as far as some people are pushing it, or where they're okay with stasis as long as it stays out of PvP. Like to where you can't use it in PvP, and I think that starts getting away from what Destiny is.
Yeah, the draw for Destiny was always that it was a
Space magic.
you were the same person, you were the same guardian no matter what you were playing. PvE, PvP, everything. As soon as you start changing that, as soon as you start making it like, okay, you take your guardian into PvP and now they have these limited abilities and these and when you start not being able to do the same things or carry the same abilities or weapons or anything into PvP from PvE, then you're fundamentally changing kind of what this idea of what Destiny is about, crafting this guardian with this specific gear and specific abilities.
All right, so what is your overall feel or thoughts on stasis being added as an element to the game?
I really enjoy it overall. I think it's a really interesting new element. It's been a kind of tough. It's been kind of tough to adapt to a little bit in terms of PvP, and it's, it doesn't maybe have the same usefulness in PvE in some scenarios, but in some scenarios it does. It's you're really crafting like the different builds and everything. it's been really interesting, and I'm curious. One of the biggest things to me is that always when they've added new stuff before, it's always come like a lot at once. New subclasses, you get a ton of new subclasses, and this feels kind of odd because you have stasis being added as the one new darkness ability, and then they're going to trickle out the rest of the darkness abilities, and you kind of have to earn up the stasis fragments and those little things as well. And that feels, it's cool. It's really, it's fun to do. It's nice to feel like you're building your character and you're earning that up again, because that was a thing back in D1. You had to build out your character and earn up all those slots, and then you could kind of customize and upgrade as you wanted to. But I don't know. It's again that trickle effect where, is it better to put it all out this way as opposed to just dropping a bunch of darkness powers by releasing a Destiny 3?
Starting over again.
Mm-hmm. That kind of would eventually go into the sunsetting conversation, obviously, but there are definite pros and cons to both. And so I think that's a lot of the problems that we're seeing with Stasis, is that it is being just kind of slotted into the game and then balanced into the game as is. And so it doesn't feel like as big of a change for a lot of things, bringing all these darkness elements in. But
I feel like the same thing kind of happened in D1 when we got Taken King, when each class got their ability they didn't have. Their third element. And you and I both primarily play Titans. I mean, there was a point in time for like about 2 weeks where we could throw like a bazillion hammers because as it was broken, or when they introduced like Nova Warp and the Warlock Arc, I can't think of the name of it right now, the Geo Reach, or the Arc, like the Arc Bolts. And the hunters got a more agile like void ability that wasn't based on the bow. It was like a void like blade dancer thing. So like these things are being added. People are figuring things out. They're realizing like, hey, if I put this piece and this piece and this piece together, I can do this. And that's the part of Destiny that I think is like sometimes the most fun, is like tinkering and figuring out and finding out what works before everything kind of shifts over to the best thing to do is to do ABC.
Yeah, because you get a lot of different metas, a lot of different builds before everybody's like, oh, chainsaw sword for everything.
So, there was a rumor from like a Luke Smith interview that like the stasis treatment may be given to the light subclasses, to the Solar, Arc, and Void, and people were kind of like freaking out because they were like, well, maybe, like he was kind of hinting at like maybe Nova Warp goes away. And because Nova Bomb is doing better for Warlocks, and people were like, you're gonna vault more stuff. And I think that taking what he said in that article into context of how deep he was getting and how things were or weren't gonna function, is that I think it'd be very interesting if within like the Solar Titan, that between your augments and fragments, that any of those pieces could still be kind of used. Like you could depending on if you like, because like right now with the Titan stasis ability, we have this fragment that we can equip that allows you to slide farther and shatter ice, and and I think that having a fragment and an augment built into the new, and pure speculation here, into the new Solar Titan class with the stasis tree built into it, to where you could slot an augment and a fragment to have your melting point Titan, to have your Titan to have the ability to do his shoulder charge that applies a debuff to the enemy. I think people are like looking at, oh, they're going to take my stuff and put it away, versus they're going to take it and retool it and change it maybe, and make you make intelligent choices, or choices that are net and needed for that particular encounter, or whatever you're working on at that current time.
Yeah, it's the deeper RPG model that they want to go for, that they've been going for, that is kind of the thing that they're always trying to find that balance of maybe not necessarily going too deep to allow players who want to just like hop on and play a quick little round or two, and players who want to get on and for hours tinker with their builds and find out all that works. And so I don't envy the people that have to figure all of that out and balance all of that, because as we're kind of seeing right now in the state of Destiny is a roller coaster. It's absolutely a roller coaster, and you're not going to please everybody all the time.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about what I think is one of the coolest things that had came with Beyond Light, and it's also always been one of my favorite activities, whether I can get 6 people to do it or not, is the raid, and in particular the Deepstone Crypt. We've heard of rumblings of the Deepstone Crypt all the way back to like the Vault of Glass, like early year 1 of Destiny 1. Like, we've heard rumblings of this place.
Because that was Cade.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it first came from, was like Deepstone Crypt, Exos, like, yeah, just the low rumblings deep in the lore. If you were paying attention to the lore, that's where you get it from.
Yeah. So then the ability to go there and to have a, like this super cool facility, and to go, yeah, and there's, I mean, obviously if you haven't completed it or know what's going on, like if you don't want to, like, I would stop listening, but to essentially, like, we're crashing a ship.
So we went into the raid blind. Didn't we tried for a day 1 completion, like right alongside everybody else, and got to experience it kind of blind. And the progression of events through the Deepstone Crypt raid is such a cool progression and like story, and again, Beyond Light's narrative driven, the way it tells its story, it's almost better than some of the other raids, where you're kind of, some of the other raids, if you're not paying attention, you're kind of like, why did we go through and do what we were doing? Oh, we went to a place and then we killed a thing, and then we went to a place and we killed a thing, and you're not really fully understanding the story of what you're doing.
Yeah, it was definitely, the Deepstone stuff was definitely on par with the Forsaken and the Last Wish stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of like what we were doing. Maybe not as much the Garden Salvation, or as much as, even like Vault of Glass from Destiny 1,
Yeah, like Garden was really confusing unless you really dig into the lore and figure out what you're doing. You're like, why are we here? What are we doing? Who is this guy? Why are we chasing this thing around? But Deepstone Crypt was really cool when you get to the one encounter and you're trying to figure out how to do the Atrax encounter in particular. First you see Taniks like pop out, and you're like, wow, there's Taniks as a cyborg Taniks. There's Atrax 1, which is an Exo Fallen. And then you get into those pods, and I was the first one in our group to hop in a pod and shoot up to space, and I'm just freaking out to everybody. I'm like, guys, I'm in space! I'm in space! And they have no idea what I'm talking about. They're down there trying to fight things, figure out what's going on, and I'm freaking out because I'm shooting up into space, and I'm like, I'm up on the space platform, and we've completed it something like 20 times now since then, and it's a little routine now, but it's really cool remembering back to that moment of figuring out and realizing like what the whole setting is, and that like, wow, some of us are going up to space, like through this space elevator, clear far away from everybody else who's down on the surface still, and we're up on this space platform, and now we're doing this raid encounter like separated between the two of them. And then the whole
similar, I got a lot of similar feelings to that of like when we, again, like Vault of Glass, like their first raid in Destiny 1, where you were in different dimensions.
Yeah, where you go through the portal and you're like, I'm somewhere else. I don't know where I am, guys. What's going on? It looks like I'm on Mars or something. And then crashing it, that whole encounter with Taniks, where the whole thing is just disabling the nuclear cores so that when it crashes, not to stop it from crashing, but when it crashes, it doesn't just nuke the whole moon. And so you get to be on this crashing ship, and then you crash, and then I think some people still don't realize that the final encounter takes place
in the same spot where
you came in. It's the entry area, because normally you just run through that as you're running in past the Sparrow part, but just really well crafted and well designed, and it takes some from Last Wish, where Last Wish kind of looped back on itself. So it takes some inspiration from that design, where it's it's not a linear raid necessarily. It kind of like goes here and then up and then crashes and loops back on where you've already been. And what did you think about all of the encounters and kind of the difficulty of it, and how does it feel to play to you?
Well, I actually did my first clear yesterday. And it just had to do with being able to get a group, and again, it's a me thing. Like, it's just in terms of my ability and my time and when I'm available and stuff. And obviously things get better with power level and, you know, being leveled high enough for it then versus, you know, contest modifier being on with the 24-hour, you know, debuff that you get. But I'm kind of to the point now where, like, it's more like the mechanics and working together. I love the 6 people working together aspect of, like, and they've been able to do something over time where it's like, okay, there are certain things that you can do by yourself, or that you can do, like, if something, there's enough, I feel like, especially with this raid, there's enough hero moments where you can save something by yourself, and versus some of the other raids, like, you weren't able to do that. It would be like, well, we messed up, we're dead. It's like, you know, so there's a couple save points here, like, where, like, a person or 2 people can save it if somebody dies. But I mean, like, it is the most fun when you have, like, that. And I love the well-oiled machine, like, going through and getting it done. Like, maybe like your group that you have that's done it like 20 times. Like, you guys are probably getting it done in like 45 minutes every Tuesday or Wednesday now.
About 30 to 35 minutes. I think our fastest run is somewhere around 30 minutes.
So that's kind of like with, again, like, where people kind of talk about the loop of Destiny. Like, I can't believe you just do the same thing over and over again. Well, yeah, I mean, I do, but it's not the same thing over and over again if I'm playing with different people, because, like, the feel is different. And then 2, it's like hanging out with my friends, like, for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. Like, it's kind of like, you know, my poker night, or, like, you know, people's poker night of, like, you know, hanging out with 5 or 6 of my buds, and we're just talking about stuff. And when it becomes that much of a routine for you, you're just talking to your friends, like, you're playing, and, like, and that's the part that I love the most. So
our third runs every week are typically complete disasters, which is funny because you were mentioning the hero moments and the ability to kind of, like, save. There's a lot more wiggle room and room for error where you can just have a completely just crappy run through and somehow still complete the encounter, and everybody's like, how did we do that? And that tends to happen with our third runs each week now, because it's become so, I don't want to say formulaic for us, but it's just become kind of a thing where, okay, we're grinding, trying to get the rocket launcher now to finish out the title, and we just hop on and we want to bust it out in you know, a couple of hours at most, and all 3 of our runs. And by our third run, you know, 3 of us are drunk and 2 of us are tired, and, you know, 1 other person just doesn't care.
There's a kid screaming in the background.
Exactly. It's just an absolute disaster. But those disastrous runs have been some of the absolute most fun runs that we've ever had for those, and we're just laughing hysterically and having a blast while playing it. And, you know, it's kind of when we don't need to take the content that seriously anymore, and that it does, especially during pandemic where we're not going anywhere. I'm not, we don't have gaming events to go to, so we're not seeing people in person. And then even around locally, I'm not going out to a bar or out to dinner with friends or anything. So that well,
you're not even going to your parents' house. Like, it's not like I'm not even going to mom and dad's for dinner on a random Wednesday because there's a thing in the world.
Maybe I should get my mom to play Destiny, and that's how I can spend more time with her. But yeah, it becomes that, where it's just this really fun Friday night hangout and really goofy. And then everybody, you know, we finish that third goofy run and everybody's like, all right, well, I'm out. And maybe a couple people will stay on and 3 of us will run something else. But yeah, I like, people complained about how quote unquote easy it was because it had so many day 1 completions and that it's an easier raid. And I like its room for error. I like that it's easier, quote unquote easier. It's still not an easy raid. It's got
it's still mechanically driven. Like, I mean, it's not. I like it. It's not really a damage driven raid. I mean, it can turn into a damage driven raid, but you have to execute things, and you know, it's definitely a lot of fun and has some interesting elements. It's also, the community is coming off of its longest time without a different raid. Like
more than a year since Garden.
Yeah, so, like, this is the longest gap that Destiny players have gone in without having a raid. And even, you know, like, challenge mode, and, you know, like, even going all the way back to D1, even with, like, the Oryx raid, like there was still, like, a different version of the raid that came out later, and that changed the mechanically of it. And this is the longest without any kind of update to it. It was almost 14 months.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't even appear that we'll have even close to that much of a gap because they're bringing Vault of Glass back. Whether people like it or don't like it, it's still a different raid. Like there are plenty of players that have only played D2. So, you know, like that this will be the first time seeing it. If you're primarily a PC player, you don't even know what D1. There's people in my clan that didn't play D1 at all. So that'll, you know, when Vault of Glass comes in, which is the original Destiny raid, like that'll be a really cool experience. And I also don't expect it to be a copy paste.
No,
there's going to be
make
some
it
different things to it.
Narratively relevant, because as I had it pointed out the other day, I think it was Paul Tassi on Twitter pointed out that Bungie goes to extraordinary lengths to explain via lore how the character respawns. You know, so even just basic elements of gameplay like respawning mechanics, Bungie goes to lengths to explore. They've explained, you know, why Gambit and Crucible maps can be on the locations that are consumed by darkness now. And again, that's in deep lore. If you read it, I can't even remember where it is now, but somewhere they talked about how Saint and Osiris and Shaxx worked on basically like a virtual reality console for...
It's a COVID bubble.
Yeah. They basically worked on this console that's these simulated environments for Crucible training, to train in those environments still. And that's their fun lore explanation of like, yeah, this is why you're still able to go fight on Mercury, because it's not real. It's not, you know. Same with the story missions, where it was like meditations. You were meditating on old story missions. And
the other thing I want to touch on briefly from the raid is I feel like, yeah, you know what? I'm pretty confident in saying this. I think this is the best loot pool raid we've had in Destiny 2.
Yeah. I'm
in terms of like the desirable weapons.
Yes, there are some very, very cool weapons from it. The shotgun is great. The hand cannon's great. Those two I use regularly, and then a few of the other things I've swapped in my loadout pretty often. In
terms of like the like, where did you get that from, or how do you, like, as an example, like how are you carrying 16 rounds in your shotgun? Because you have the ability to get a perk of, you know, reconstruction from the shotgun. And you know, it's very similar. Like, okay, like I want to go to the raid because I want that, and like I feel like the Trustee Scout Rifle is very good. The Void heavy machine gun, which I still haven't got my hands on yet, but like that's, you know, like in terms of the additional loot to the game, and along with the exotic Eyes of Tomorrow, again being a very, very good, probably, yeah, I would say maybe number 2 or number 3 in the list of exotics, of desirable exotics coming from a raid, like Anarchy being number 1. Just because of the functionality that Anarchy does from the Earth raid that I'm totally blanking on the name right now.
Scourge of the Past, yeah.
Correct, yeah. So I mean that's kind of like the recap of like where we're at with Beyond Light. It does look like they're still trying to tell stories, and I guess the last thing I want to talk to you with you about in terms of the Beyond Light aspect of this is, what's your feeling on, because I think that you and I both maybe feel the same way on this, like the Europa storyline isn't done.
Not even close. It really feels like it's just kicking off, and could have feasibly been, like, if this had been the start of Destiny 3, it wouldn't have fazed me. It wouldn't have surprised me at all. Like, this feels like that level of...
But I guess my question to you is, like, how are you feeling that they're doing of drawing 2 parallel lines, figurative parallel lines in the sand, saying, okay, here's the seasonal storyline that we're telling, and then here's the, I guess, paid expansion storyline that we're telling, and then how those lines, even though I just called them parallel lines, tend to cross over each other periodically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think we saw a lot of the same discussion at the start of Shadowkeep with Shadowkeep, and then Season of the
Hunt.
What?
No, well, not Season of the Hunt.
Season of the Hunt is now. Season of the Vex stuff. You know, people were really confused about how does this storyline with Shadowkeep and this pyramid on the moon and the darkness and everything like that, how does that tie into the Vex and the Black Garden and that whole side of the storyline, and that really confused people. They didn't really tie that in very well. But then over time, throughout the course of the year, those 2 storylines did start to weave together, and we started to see the progression of it. And obviously now the pyramid ships and all of that, and now we're here. And I think we're starting to see the same thing again, where it's a solar system and there are lots of elements. There's lots of things that are happening. There's obviously the stuff on Europa and with the darkness and discovering all of that. And then with the Crow and doing the hunts and the Wrathborn missions. But eventually that has to cross over. Mm-hmm. And it will cross over, and I think we'll have those elements that, we're even confirmed that Crow will have a new position in season 13. Mm-hmm. He'll have,
which means that something interesting is going to happen with him in the next 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, he will go somewhere. We've rescued him from Spider from that last Wrathborn mission, and he's going back to the. Likely back to the tower. There's all the speculation. Is he going to be the speaker now? Is he going to be the Hunter Vanguard now? How's that all going to play out? But then that will fundamentally tie into our further pursuit of the darkness. And I feel like our pursuit of the darkness will continue to evolve throughout future seasons. Mm-hmm. This year, even before, we get to Witch Queen in...
Which is Savathûn, and they're hinting like Savathûn's been all over the last 18 months of Destiny. So,
yeah, I mean, even back to launch Destiny 2. Actually, Taken King, wasn't it? They had
the statues and stuff. Well, the statues and stuff outside of Oryx's. Yeah, well, that was Nokris, and they touched on it a little bit. But I mean, Bungie and tons of video game studios, developers in general, have been great at doing this. Like, Gaul was hinted at in the beginning of Destiny, in the beginning of Taken King. Like, there was a distress signal sent from Phobos that Gaul received when Oryx arrived. And that was, and that was multiple, years later. So Savathûn has been teased and toyed with, and the Queen, and, there's so many interesting characters. And then, I mean, we barely touched on about but Varix disappeared, and now Varix is back, and he's an NPC that we're dealing with on Europa on a regular basis.
And then the whole fact that he was the one who caused the events of Forsaken that led to Cade's death, and so he has to answer for that in some way too. I feel like that's a storyline that's coming down the road. Varix answering for his crimes, because he even says that within it. He's like, okay, listen, we need to deal with the threat of Aramis now, and her getting her hands on the darkness now, but I promise I will answer for my crimes if you help me.
Right. So, I mean, there's just tons and tons of aspects of it, and they've done a tremendously better job of weaving that into what I would call in-your-face storytelling, which is, I think, what you were referring to, of not having to read it on a random piece of legs. Because the thing that the story that I'm most disappointed with, and I'm assuming that with the Content Vault we're going to get it again, though, is Callus is such a cool character. And if you really read the lore on the raid armor from the Leviathan, there were some very interesting things that we were kind of going towards, and it just didn't seem like Bungie was either ready or able to execute what they wanted. They might have, again, had a broad spectrum and were painting with a very broad brush, and they realized they had to use a smaller brush.
Yeah. And some of that's even being further teased now, even though all the Callus stuff and the Leviathan has all been sunset and is in the vault for the time being. You're getting teased stuff about his daughter being out there still. And again, that's the deep lore stuff, where that's if people want to dig into that and start digging into the deep lore and getting those hints at the future, that's where you're going to find those hints at what's coming in the future. So I appreciate that they're still able to juggle both of those and give us a lot of those deep lore hints if people want to go get them and want to understand, oh, okay, some Callus stuff is it seems like that's bubbling and brewing still under the surface. They're not letting that go, versus in your face, here's interactions between the Exo Stranger, who turns out it's Elsie Bray, Anna Bray's sister, all this stuff with Anna Bray being evil in alternate timelines, which is just some crazy stuff. I'm just thrilled that all that's more on the surface now, and that we're actually getting that. Even stuff like the Varix being at fault for Forsaken, that was deep lore stuff in Forsaken. If you didn't look into it, you would have never known that it was Variks that caused basically the disaster that was Forsaken to end up happening.
Right. All right, so we've gotten into the nitty-gritty of our impressions the last couple of months and our likes and our dislikes. Now we're going to get into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of looking forward into Destiny and some of the challenges and some of the cool things that they've been doing. So the first thing that I have on here, or I guess the first thing you have on here, and I'll let you take this part, is the changes that they announced today in the weekly update to what they're changing with the triumphs and titles.
And kind of what's coming next season. Yeah. So one of my biggest complaints with the current state of Destiny 2, and I want to say this with all, like, that it's completely understood on my end, and I get it that they can't necessarily, they don't have the manpower and the ability to put out all of this all at once. But one of my biggest things is, as they're putting out all this new content and the new expansion and the seasonal content, all of the ritual activities have just fallen by the wayside. Gambit, Strikes, Crucible. We haven't gotten a new Crucible map in how long? We haven't got a
Since Forsaken.
Exactly. We haven't got a new Gambit map in.
We actually lost some.
We lost some, and we've been on the same set of like 4-ish maps or whatever since virtually since Gambit came out, almost, except for.
And I think we lost, like, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think we lost like six strikes and only gained 1, and that was a reprisal from Destiny 1, 2. I'm sorry, because we got Glassway as well.
Yeah. So, you know, they are not. Arguably, you know, when you had the previous expansion format where they did like a story expansion and they added some strikes and they added some Crucible maps, and it was kind of this really formulaic, every 3 or 4 months they'd add all that new stuff, you at least were kind of revamping and re-upping each of the ritual activities each time. With this new seasonal content and the way they're focusing that, ritual activities are just falling by the wayside. And anytime I'm told that I need to go play Gambit for something or go into the Strike playlist for something, it's a big groan on my end. It's not anything I ever want to go do. So
yeah, I have only like started to do it if I'm looking, and again, like, my ability to min max with Dim is to make the most out of my time, and I'm like, all right, like, I'm at the point now where my character's gear score is leveled off enough. Okay, I could use a +1. All right, let me just go do 3 strikes.
Yeah. And even then, you're doing it out of necessity, not out of enjoyment of hopping into the Strike playlist. Where before,
and I think that has to do with a little bit of lack of incentive and rewards, like you said. I'm not even like, I do and I don't when I say this, but like, I don't even care that there's not 5 or 6 new strikes. I care there's not a reason for me to do the strikes.
Exactly. There is not a good reason to do them, and then they're not any different than they were. I play the Strike playlist today, and it's not much different than the Strike playlist that I played 2 years ago.
Right. They might be fixing that with what they talked about today, though, at least from my perspective of rewarding a little bit of my time for doing that with the possible return, or not the possible, but with the confirmed return of the Umbral Engram system that can be earned at Strikes. But we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, Umbral Engrams will be cool on the reward side of things. And then they also announced the gilded titles as kind of a reason to go back and grind out these ritual activities. The gilded titles are specifically for the ritual activities. So it's like if you went through and you earned, what was the Gambit title's name now? Dredgen. You know, you can go earn a gilded...
Yeah, it's Dredgen, Unbroken, Flawless, and something else.
Conqueror for the... for the
Nightfall
Grandmasters. And even that, ironically, none of that touches the Strike playlist, the general Strike playlist at all. So that still is really feeling just left by the wayside. The gilded titles, I think they're a good idea conceptually. I have my Dredgen title, but also those titles are some of the most basic titles, except for maybe like Unbroken and Flawless. Well, so here's the other irony for it is Unbroken, Flawless, and Conqueror are all extremely difficult titles to earn. You know, Unbroken and Flawless, you have Crucible, you have to be really good at. Flawless, you have to be really good at Trials. and Conqueror, you have to be really good at high level, almost like really, really tough, almost unfair end game level activities to get those completed. Whereas Dredgen, you just had to play a lot of Crucible, or play a lot of Gambit. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a weird imbalance in what it's asking you to do for that stuff. But for example, I don't have Unbroken, I don't have Flawless, and I don't have Conqueror. I do have Dredgen. Am I going to go after a gilded version of my Dredgen title? No, because it is probably one of my least proud of titles that I have in any way at all.
I find that I like my seasonal titles better because they used to show that I had a good time for 3 months, 90 days.
Well, and I got the Reckoner title as well, which was the seasonal title from
Poor child.
I know. That was a miserable experience. But there again is like, okay, I got the Reckoner title. Why am I ever going to switch that out for my Dredgen title? And
right.
So you're telling me I can get these gilded titles by doing new challenges within the ritual activities. That's not enough to me to go tick off a box. And I'm a trophy hunter. I go after trophies in games. So I'm the exact type of person they're trying to target this to. And I'm telling them, no, it is not enough for me to go back into Gambit for you to tell me, oh, we got a couple new seasonal challenges in Gambit for you to go do to gild your title that you're not even using because you have cooler titles from either raids or
and then by the way, after the season ends, your gilded goes away.
Yeah, you may have like a little count now. Oh, you've gilded this once,
but it's not something you can show off. Like even at this point, like I really like an interesting emblem, like doubling down on the emblem system or the shader system of like where like okay, I really like this shotgun and I'm gonna put this shader on that you can't have because you didn't gild your Dredgen title 4 times. I got it for doing it 4 times. Like. Yeah. It's a cosmetic thing, but it's a thing that, like whether we like it or don't like it, it's, hey, look what I got that you don't have. Like that's a thing. Like that's where Destiny's kind of basis from the RNG aspect of it has come from. And I feel like it's kind of lost some of that, and this is not fixing it.
I miss the days of D1, and we may have talked about this on the last show too, but I miss the days of D1 where you finished the raid and you got the Chatterwhite shader, and it shaded all your armor, and you were wearing Chatterwhite, and people like knew that you'd done the raid because you were wearing some pieces of raid armor, and you had Chatterwhite
from Crota,
or Glowhoo, or any of those that were really cool. I feel like,
and then the ornaments have been kind of ended up taking over the shaders for me, at least in Destiny 1. Of like, okay, well he got that ornament from completing the 400 light version of Wrath of the Machine.
I feel like there is so.
Or you got that ornament for going flawless.
Yeah, exactly, and. Things like the glows and stuff like that you could get, the little halos on your head that would like call out. You saw somebody running through the tower with a halo on their head, like, oh, they did the Nightfall this week. That was really tough. And I just feel like that's something, I feel like it's something we can never return to because nostalgia is really fickle.
Yeah.
And we can never have that feeling back because Destiny will never be new again.
Right.
But I want the next version of whatever that is. I feel like we've gotten to a point of content bloat in a way where, okay, a new shader is not exciting to me anymore because there are 50,000 shaders, 49,000 of which look the same as the rest of the shaders within the game. Like I'm getting to a point. I used to go through in every new season as the new shaders would come up for Bright Dust, I'd go and I'd buy the new ones every week that would come in just to make sure I had them in my collections. And I don't even do that anymore because I'm like, I have too many shaders now that I don't even use. And these new ones aren't giving me enough of a different cool effect or they're not enough of a reward to really drive me wanting to get them. And so adding even shaders as rewards for content, I don't know. It wouldn't drive me to do it. It's hard to say how to fix it. I don't know how to fix it. And again, I always say this about the Bungie developers is I don't envy the people in the positions that need to make these kind of decisions and figure this kind of stuff out, because it's tough.
And I'm actually okay with how they're trying to fix it a little bit. And I feel like I'm on like an island when I talk about this. And we'll kind of talk about a little bit with next season at the same time. So we don't really know, like I said earlier, we don't really know the story ramifications of next season, but they have talked about, the last couple of weeks, like they're hiring and adding people to strictly work on the reward systems and the rewards pool in Destiny, which is a lack of loot, which is their own fault for sunsetting too much stuff too fast, and overcorrection, which is a classic Bungie move over the last couple of years of Destiny, of like they swing the pendulum from the left to the right way too far, way too heavy. And I actually I like sunsetting, the concept of sunsetting. What they're doing, I don't like, but at the same time, I get why they're doing it. So they talked like 2 weeks ago or like a week ago about they're bringing some more relativity to the loot pool from the moon and from Dreaming City by reintroducing weapons and armor and upping the level. Things that they just sunset less than 30 days ago.
Yeah.
And they're saying now the only thing, sunsetting armor was dumb. Like I don't get it, and I don't agree with it, and that's beside the point. I also don't really care about armor because I don't think that the mods and the perks matter that much in the game, except for like the artifact stuff. But like me being an 88 resilience versus a 92 resilience, okay, cool, whatever. I don't really pay attention to that unless there's something specific that I'm working on. So, but that's me. It's not necessarily every player type, and I know it has a deeper play. I didn't care about it in D1 either. Like, oh, I got a tier 12 intellect. Like, don't care. The thing that I feel like, from my opinion, is the saving grace of it is that they're reintroducing Walking Vigil, which is a hand cannon from Dreaming City, and it's going to be. This is what I've wanted them to do for a long time. It's going to be updated with post Beyond Light perks, Swashbuckler and Wellsprung, and like these other perks. And to me, a gun is 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 a gun. 120 hand cannon is 120 hand cannon is 120 hand cannon. But what makes it usable, or makes what I want to use, is if it comes with like Wellsprung and Swashbuckler, because I like to punch a bunch of stuff and then want to do extra damage and get my punch back. So the people that are complaining about these guns being brought back up, rightfully so, you're the same person that's in Crucible shooting a 120 hand cannon that's just a better Devils with an FWC logo on it. But
yeah. But there again is also kind of my fundamental problem with the content bloat that we're seeing in Destiny right now is, like you said, a gun is a gun is a gun is a gun. And when we're getting so many of these guns, and so that's why I understand sunsetting. I understand why they've had to do this, and that it's the next best thing to doing a complete reset with Destiny 3. But once you've released X number of scout rifles and hand cannons and fusion rifles, like I pick up a new fusion rifle and it feels like the last fusion rifle, which feels like the last fusion rifle, and a lot of them feel. I know there are, people are, if there's any purists listening to this, they're probably like, no, they're all different. I know there are differences. There are slight, small, subtle differences within them, but the more and more content, the more and more gear and guns and everything that comes out, the more we're getting into those differences between them being so small and so subtle and so minute that the desire to get the new stuff is just going away. Mm-hmm. And then they did the sunsetting thing, but then they're also doing the bringing them back up with the new perks thing, and that's causing a big uproar for people. And I agree that perks are the big thing. That's the thing you want to go for. But that's also my big thing too, is like, okay, they're bringing back like Waking Vigil or that kind of stuff with these new perks and everything. Okay, why do I want that over my hand cannon that I have? Like I guess the one from the raid's a 180, I think, but
right, yeah.
Why do I want that over a 120 hand cannon that is actually available from this season? Mm-hmm. And what's the purpose of wanting that? And then people who ground out god rolls before, kind of going, well, you sunset my old god roll, I don't want to regrind for it even with new perks and everything because I already have a new good loadout.
Well,
it's
And
complicated.
my answer to that is don't go to the Dreaming City and don't do that.
And that's a perfect like reality check to somebody like me who's a lot of people look at
Go play the new stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at
go to
everything
Europa
from
and run the
Destiny.
Empire Hunt a bunch of times and get that sidearm that you want. Don't worry about your breach light that's getting sunset next season. Like, go get a better one.
Yeah.
Go find it. Like, I feel like people will crutch, and we can talk about like Midnight Coup and Recluse, that they find it and they find the path of least resistance, and they're like, and you took it away from me and I paid for it. I'm like, I don't care. Like, when you go from Uncharted 1 to 2, you didn't get to keep all the little like the little perks and stuff that you upgraded Nathan Drake with. You're not playing New Game Plus. Like,
Yeah, and like I will always keep saying is the alternative is Destiny 3. The alternative is hard reset,
losing all of your stuff,
losing
again,
everything, and going to Destiny 3. And I know a lot of people just are adamant that they don't want that. But
I also think it would be 10 times worse if they said, hey, next season, like, here's a new activity and here's new guns, and then all of a sudden you see a walking vigil with like a different aesthetic to it, and then they're just going to scream reskin. And I feel like that's a no-win situation for Bungie. Like, if they release I don't even know the RPM off the top of my head, but 140 arc-based hand cannon that has a similar structure to walking vigil, they're going to be like, why couldn't I just use my walking vigil? Give me that back. All right, we're going to give that back to you. I don't want to regrind that crap again. Why are you making me do that? What do you want?
Then you don't want to play the game. Another problem that I've found with Destiny is that inherently there is not a lot of content that is end game difficult enough where caring about a very specific like roll on a gun and build of your character and all of that, like you were saying, like each of the individual stats and everything, there is not really content in Destiny right now that meaningfully
is rewarding enough to take the time to worry about that.
Yes, exactly. And the content.
Have you done a Grandmaster yet?
We've tried, and the content that is hard enough to do that kind of stuff
isn't worth the squeeze.
It's not worth the squeeze because you have to squeeze to here. You have to go from here to here. There's no tinkering with your build and getting yourself a little bit better and feeling a little bit better. Like you said, those small, minute differences when you're going from 88 to 92, you're not feeling that difference. If Bungie were to take all the stats and all the perks and everything like that and elongate everything out, really pull it all out to where you could feel the difference. And again, for the purists out there, I know that with different perks, you can definitely feel certain differences within roles for weapons.
The YouTuber Datto, like, he put it really well. Like, Destiny has gotten taller over time, but it's never gotten wider.
Mm-hmm.
And, figuring out a way to make it wider, and the introduction of bringing some Destiny 1 weapons into the Destiny 2 loot pool, I think is a great idea. As long as you do them correctly, which it seems like they are, and updating them with current perks. And they've moved away from the outlaw rampage world and they're starting to make like Surplus and Wellspring and Swashbuckler and, do a thing, get a thing, versus just shooting people. It's more about proximity and where you're standing and what you're doing and how you're using. And I think Stasis has helped with that somewhat, like my ability to, like, as a Titan, to freeze, to freeze people or to be close enough and to then, okay, like, it's powerful enough that I want that back. I want, and then how do I get it back quickly? Oh, okay, like, now I need to pay attention to my discipline, and now I have a gun that if I get kills will get me, it's got Grenadier on it, so that I can get my grenade back faster, like those kind of things, and you can start kind of messing with those things, and that's where your game gets wider, but you have to give them time to get it wider. And then you also, like, they're not giving Bungie, like, people are freaking out about the sunsetting and the reprisal of stuff, and where Bungie's like not saying it, but in my opinion they feel like, oh crap, like we swung too hard. Okay, now we got to dial it back a little bit, and like, what's the best way to dial it back a little bit? All right, let's start, reprising this stuff. But these people are freaking out about this not being able to use their weapon. It's also 60 days,
like, without content bloat. Like,
right.
That's the other thing is, like, okay, how do we dial it back without content bloat, where people just want to use weapons that they got back in Shadowkeep or Forsaken or whatever for the rest of the time that they're playing the game, and then you have the problem of, okay, nobody wants to grind out the new stuff. If you already have a hand cannon that you absolutely love and it's not getting sunset and it's not going away and you're just holding on to that hand cannon forever, you know, if you have Fatebringer all the way from Destiny 1 just pulled all the way through Destiny 2, why are you ever going to want a better Devils? Why are you ever going to want a
without sunsetting, we would have had the world first team working on Deepstone's Crypt still using Midnight Coup. I guarantee it.
And Recluse and like yeah, I mean and then the challenge comes in content design and like encounter design and raid design, where they then have to mitigate encounters around what they know people are using and can use, and
Mountaintop, and, you know, it was like there was tons of things that were causing issues, and it's their own fault. Like, don't get me wrong, it's Bungie's own fault for creating Mountaintop and creating Recluse and creating Izanami's Burden, and you know, going all the way back to Destiny 1, creating Gallowhorn.
In my opinion, as a counterpoint to that, I'll throw out that like something like Recluse. Using Recluse, I think, was a period of some of the most fun I've ever had in Destiny. I loved Recluse as a weapon. It was a great weapon, but it helped fulfill that power fantasy. It helped me feel like it was making a difference in encounter design and in weapon choice and in what I was using and as I was playing, because it felt more powerful and it felt good to play.
I agree, but it also felt that if you weren't using it, you were doing yourself a disservice.
Exactly. And so there's the balance, and there's the but now nothing feels meaningful at all, where I run Deepstone Crypt now with my group, and I don't save for like the things that you need, like, oh, you know, we're bringing in the Lament to sort everything, and for final encounter we need
a slug
shotguns to destroy him, and I've got 2 auto loading holster slug shotguns that I just swap between while doing that and just nuke him. But other than that, like for general encounter playthrough, I don't really care what I'm using, you know.
And I think that's a factor of bounty, like we haven't even really talked about it, like, but bounty fatigue, which I still don't think they've really fixed either, is that now bounties exist. So bounties are what's making, I mean, bounties have always existed, or for the most part have always existed, but they're making me like, oh, this bounty says I have to use a fusion rifle to get kills without dying. Okay, like, let me go find a fusion rifle and dim and grab it. Oh, this one says I have to get sidearm kills, or this one says I have to get void kills. Okay, well, I have to get void kills and sidearm kills, so let me find a void sidearm.
On any given character, I'll just try and keep one of each weapon type on there, just to kind of be like, oh, okay, so I have a sidearm if I need to pull it out and use it, and I don't even care what sidearm it is. You know, for the most part, I have a few key core weapons that I use, but everything else is just kind of there. And then even when I switch out to that stuff, I don't feel like it's much different from my key core weapons, and it's both a problem and also it's something that I don't fundamentally care about. I don't. It is a problem, and it is a problem for a lot of people, but I'm not letting it be a problem for me, because I still have fun playing Destiny. I mean, through all this, as much as I can complain about Destiny, 3,000 plus hours in.
Well, it happened on Tuesday. Like, today's Thursday during the week, but it happened on Tuesday to me. Like, I was home, I was off work. You know, like, reset happened at like noon my time, and I'm scrolling through Twitter at like 1:15, and it's like, oh, new mission. I'm like, okay. I told my wife, I'm like, I'm gonna go play Destiny. There's something new to do. You know, it's like, and she's like, all right, whatever. You know, and I hadn't played it.
Stupidly tough mission. It was hard.
And I hadn't played. I told you it was hard.
You did.
I hadn't played it in, you know, like a week or 10 days, which is a relatively long time for me. But, you know, like I tell people all the time, like, Destiny's like my, you know, my favorite TV show or my favorite T-shirt. That you know, like, oh, like, it's you know, it's in my, it's, open the dresser drawer, it's right there. You don't have to work that day. Okay, that T-shirt goes on. Or it's like, oh, it's like I'm scrolling through channel surfing, which I don't do anymore because I don't watch cable, I watch all apps. But it's like, oh, like, this show is on, you know, at 8:15 or whatever, and like, oh, like, you're just halfway through the episode, you just watch the rest of it because it's like whatever, Simpsons for people or whatever it is.
I'm intrigued in the mystery of this crime drama. What's going on?
So, you know, there's that factor to it, and that's fine. So I guess, what are you hoping for? Because, like, the associate game director Joe Blackburn left Bungie, came back, and now he's an assistant director, and he's promised a state of the game, you know, next season for Destiny, and they've hinted at this stuff. So, like, what are you hoping for? And then we'll kind of get into a couple of the community questions that we had, and probably wrap it. So.
Cool. I don't want to have too many hopes because I don't want my expectations to color the reality. And I think that's a large part of why people get disappointed with Destiny. For all of my complaints about it, I am enjoying Destiny right now. I think it's really good. I think the Europa stuff is great. The Europa
doesn't
story
feel
stuff,
like a job anymore.
No.
D1 felt like a job.
This feels like, I leveled up through the first little bit, and then I hop on once a week to maybe go grind out the what's it called in Europa, where you go shoot the drones that are flying around and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the little weekly things that you kind of pick up and do. But again, those are things that I can do over the course of an hour, couple hours, 1 or 2 nights a week. And then I can go off and I can play other things. And that's nice to me, that I feel that freedom to play something else. So I hope, yeah. And so the fact that I don't need to play the game, that I don't feel like I need to go through, there's stuff that I can do if I want to go through and play the ritual activities and get the ornaments for Adored and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't feel that there's this driving need for me to do any of that stuff anymore. And I hope they continue to perpetuate that, give me some solid, good, meaty content that is still trickled out. I don't mind the trickle out. Give me that seasonal trickle, give me that expansion, even the trickle of the expansion content. And give me almost even more so than rewards, because I feel like there's once again, there's reward bloat. You tell me that I'm getting a new emblem. Great. I have a ton of emblems that I really, really love already. I don't necessarily want a new emblem for certain things. You tell me I'm getting a new shader, same kind of thing. There's so many shaders, so many ghosts, sparrows, ships, so much bloat there that those rewards are having less and less meaning each time. I want more meaning to play the actual activity, like when they introduced strike scoring back in D1 to the strike playlist, and that completely revamped the way that people engaged with the strike playlist. That's what I want, is same content. Give me the same content. That's fine. I'm fine playing the same things over and over again with little tweaks in how I engage with it. So give me something that makes the strike playlist interesting to go through again, even if I'm just getting a blue drop by the end of it. I don't even necessarily care so much about rewards anymore as much as I do and I mean, this goes to the end game is the friend game thing, right? But as much as I just want to enjoy playing Destiny and not feel like it's a chore and not feel like I'm just going through things, which on the one side of expansion and seasons I'm really feeling, but on the ritual side of things it's not there for me.
Yeah, and it looks like they're teasing some of the stuff next season of what, and I think they need to you're kind of almost going back to like Destiny 1, like a little bit of a reputation system, and as you earn more reputation in the Crucible, you unlock certain rewards. I'm a little concerned with seeing the screenshots from that of okay, you need to have some like really good rolled weapons available for, make it a reason to if you reset your rank 3 times, you get this hand cannon with this perfect curated fully masterworked roll that everybody agrees that's the thing. Okay, there's a reason, there's a thing to do that. I hope, please implement the reputation system for Iron Banner, please.
That's another thing from D1 that just never really came back in a full good way in D2 that I'm really surprised at.
Getting a really good pulse rifle or getting a really good shotgun, for maxing out your weekly reputation, whether there was a boost or wasn't a boost. I don't even know if you need to do that anymore. Here's the rewards. If you want to make them seasonally based, you have to get to rank 10 of Iron Banner, and you can earn 3 ranks per event, and you get 3.5 ranks per event, and you get 1 per month, and you get to rank 10, and you get this thing, this weapon or this piece of armor or this, even if it's an exotic, just a reason to do it, like you had mentioned. So put some really good rewards in there, and put some rewards in there for leveling. Really look at, don't punish a player that maybe doesn't play, make it a somewhat achievable. And the unfortunate part about that is if you make it achievable, somebody will, the day the content comes out, will achieve it and they'll put it on on Reddit or on Twitter or on YouTube and say, hey, here's what it is, and I got it. And then the public perspective is oh, well, that's not rewarding. Oh, well, that guy just played for 13 and a half straight hours. the same activity. So if you play an hour or 2 hours a week, for the season that lasts 12 weeks, it's the same thing. Like, it's just, it's just a matter of how you choose to consume your content. And I think that that's fine. You just have to know and understand of like, okay, that's really cool, but I can't get that because I'm not good enough. And I'm okay with that. Or I'm not willing to commit. Like, there's a really cool sidearm, and I really like sidearms. There's a really cool sidearm in Gambit for resetting your rank 4 times. I don't want to play that much Gambit. It ain't worth it to me. But I know that I won't get that. Or, you know what? I really want that. I don't really like Gambit, but I really want that. So I'm going to figure out a way to either get this or learn to like Gambit.
The best thing that ever happened to me for my enjoyment of Destiny was setting aside my completionist, kind of trophy hunting attitude, because that's how I used to approach Destiny was that attitude of like, okay, I need to get all the triumphs. I need to get all the gear. I need to do all the things. And when you understand and appreciate that Destiny is this more grand, big thing that's almost not meant for you to do all these things. It's like going to the state fair or something like that, and you pick and choose at the state fair what you want to see, what you want to do, what you want to eat. You don't actually go there with the intent of going, okay, I'm going to go to every booth at the state fair and I'm going to ride every ride at the state fair. I'm sure some people do.
And I'm going to win every carnival game 100%.
Yeah. So once I turned that side of things off of my brain with how I engage with Destiny 2, it's really changed my enjoyment for the better with things, where I just went, okay, I don't want to play Gambit again. I'm not going to do Gambit this season. I know there's a couple of Gambit things, and there's the Adored Ornament, and there's some triumphs for the season and stuff. Why do I want to get those except to tick off a little checkbox and to make a number go up? And while I like those things, and there's still this like part of me that's bubbling somewhere down in here, like, do it. I'm like, no, there's other things that I really want to enjoy. There's other games that have come out that I'm enjoying playing through, and I'm having a good time. Or,
because you wouldn't be if you were forcing yourself to get that skin that could get replaced, in 3 months.
But that skin,
it's going to be a new one to get.
That extra 5 points on my triumph score, which my triumph score is already, really high anyway compared to a lot of other people's. So I accepting that and going through that and kind of setting myself up for what I actually do want to do within Destiny, which at this point is the expansion content and the seasonal content. And I'll grind for some of that stuff, but I'm enjoying it because it's new content, it's new stuff that I'm doing, and I'm enjoying pushing for that. That's great. I don't want to do Strike Playlist. Okay, cool. I rarely ever have to go talk to Zavala.
Yeah. So, and I think like for me, like it's just what I'm hoping for is just enough to, just enough engagement, enough reason. I think Deepstone Crypt has been a step in the direction where people are like seeing some of the stuff, like the rewards that are coming from there, going, all right, you know what? I need to level myself up. I need to get good enough, and I need to learn this, because I miss those days of people going, you know what? I don't know how to do the raid, or I'm afraid to do the raid because I don't want to mess up. All right, well, come on. Come with my group of 4 or 5 friends, and let's get you through it. Let's get you some stuff. And hearing that excitement of, like, getting the shotgun or getting the rocket launcher or getting a gun that they didn't have that they thought looked cool that somebody else had. Like, I want that to be there. And I think Vault of Glass will help with that. I am a little concerned about, like if you bring Fatebringer back, or you bring Found Verdict back, or you bring, some of these things back, like what is that going to do to the loot pool in Destiny? In terms of the desire that people have to get things, like, is that going to break some things and make people only want to use that? That does bother me a little bit, but at the same time, like, it means that the raid stuff is relevant and doing, 6-player core activities is good again. Like,
and maybe break some things, like, because that's when Destiny has been at, like I said, when it's been at its best, and sometimes it's most fun is like when you earn that thing like Recluse, and you're like, I have Recluse, all right, I'm gonna play with this now. And for the next little while now, Recluse went on for a really long time, and then it became the only thing to use. But sometimes those power spikes are a lot of fun. And it's also, I've been thinking a little bit about the irony of how mad people were at a reset in Destiny 2, taking away everything that we had before. but then the excitement that it generated by bringing back old weapons from D1, like think about
they controlled
Hawkmoon.
Twitter. Yeah, they controlled Twitter on Tuesday with their Harbinger mission.
Yeah, and bringing back Hawkmoon in a big and meaningful way. If you don't sunset, if you don't take away things, if you don't now, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting necessarily sunsetting or taking away exotics at this point, but maybe that's an option for the future. If you're keeping Destiny going for years and years and years, maybe just temporary removal of exotics is something that you need to do to kind of control the meta a little bit better. I don't know what that looks like. But it definitely brings a lot of excitement when stuff like that comes back. And when you have like the Hawkmoon mission, people are really, really stoked and excited about it. And if we're not having a full reset, we're never going to have that kind of like nostalgic meaningfulness again with getting old stuff back.
All right. So let me pull up a couple of these questions. I mean, do you have anything else, like what's your feelings on sunsetting? I mean, you kind of really talked about what your feelings on sunsetting are. Did you, like, what do you think about, okay, quickly we'll talk about, like, what do you feel about their, because I think they dropped the ball on this too, this expansion. I think they brought the Cosmodrome there just for the free-to-play player. They haven't used it well enough for the current players.
Have you done the new Light Quest yet?
No.
It's really cool, and I think it works really well as an introduction to Destiny 2, and its mechanics, and Shahan giving you bounties and stuff like that, and just how.
Yeah, but that doesn't, like, to you or I, that doesn't matter.
It doesn't, and. So I think, again, that's a level of expectation that people had for the Cosmodrome coming back, that it would be this bigger thing for the veteran players and everything. And I think really it was designed because it's only a limited portion of the Cosmodrome. It's still a very large limited portion, but it cuts off kind of the back half of the Cosmodrome and some of the extra little areas, and then doesn't have any of the areas from Rise of Iron that were added. But it's, I think it's a really, really good jumping off point for the free-to-play game and for the new Light players.
Oh, yeah, for a free-to-play player, I think it's great. And I just think it could have been one of those things where you could have made one really long mission and not necessarily make it a destination for veteran players to go to. But I guess it's another, like, I think they felt like they were vaulting so much that they're like, okay, like, we know we're putting this all away, but like go look at that thing. It's like, okay, yeah, you put legendary lost sectors in there,
Yeah, it gives them the opportunity throughout the season, though, to do that very thing, like to maybe shift legendary lost sectors over there, or to maybe, suddenly maybe season 13 or season 14 is focused on the Cosmodrome, and there's tons of stuff there. Maybe Navota or
I mean, I hope so. Like, I hope like the next seasonal content and seasonal activity is, like, don't get me wrong, like their ability to use Tangled Shore and Dreaming City for the season of the hunt, I think was great. Like I like going there again and having a reason to go there. So now, like, I go to Europa, Tangled Shore, Dreaming City, and like those are fine. And now, like, next season, like being able to use the moon for legendary lost sectors, and I'm assuming Dreaming City for legendary lost sectors as well, and then a reason to do the dungeons to get specific rolls on weapons. All great valid things. If that pulse rifle from the moon that you want, go do the dungeon. That directional loot is great. The reintroduction of the Umbral Engrams into the recaster next season to be able to kind of safety net yourself to be able to get things that you want, and then the more time you play, the more focused or you can try to get that thing. That system, I think, is going to work really well, and I hope that like for players that works. But at the same time, I hope that those systems aren't replacing, to your point, like almost this entire show is like, do not replace the ability for me to play this narrative driven content that you've been added to the game. But at the same time, they need to figure out a way to make me go into the Strike playlist, and it will going into the Strike playlist for an hour every other day when I get home from work, because I want to earn 4 or 5 Umbral Engrams because I'm trying to get a great rolled pulse rifle. Like, I hope so. Like, I hope there's something in the Umbral Engram pool that makes it feel like it's worth my time. Like, all right, I got 4 Engrams today, let's go try to get this sword, or let's go try to get this rocket that I want again, to me, a rocket is a rocket is a rocket. It's just like I need it with tracking and cluster again or something.
Yeah, And it's tough, and it's a tough balance, and I'm really eager to see their state of the game stuff and kind of have them tell us what's coming. And I mean, whatever it is, I'll be on board for it. I can't think of anything they could do disastrously enough that would tell me like, nope, I'm done with Destiny 2. I'm stepping off of it altogether. I'll be here. I buy the Bungie rewards. You know, I'm wearing like, I think 4 pieces of Destiny clothing right now. The beanie, the 9 hoodie, I think a shirt underneath, socks. Like I'm in. Bungie, you've got me. So, you know,
just don't blow it up again.
Yeah, for everything I can complain about, they've got me. I'm going to play. It's a fun game. I love it. I'm here.
All right. So there's 2 questions that I think will lead us to talk for a couple minutes, and then we'll call it. We'll wrap it up. So like I posted on the Facebook group today and on Twitter, and if you guys had questions, like to send them in. So Josh Nichols writes, I haven't played since Forsaken. I just got busy with other games and obligations. I still love Destiny. Would it be easy to jump back in, and do you have any suggestions? I'm just a little overwhelmed and nervous since it's been so long. I have access to all the expansions through Game Pass. I think the idea of being behind and overwhelmed is what's keeping me from jumping back in. Thank you in advance for any advice and help, and hope you're both doing good. So I think Josh knows you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm caught up and overwhelmed. let's put it that way. And I think, again, it goes back to what I was saying about the best thing I ever did for Destiny, for my enjoyment of Destiny, was to take a step back from it and not intentionally not feel so overwhelmed. I think some of that overwhelming feeling comes from making yourself feel overwhelmed in a lot of ways. It's very different, obviously, when you're coming in from a story perspective and coming in with all this new content and new ways of doing things. And you know, it's what's keeping me from like playing Final Fantasy 14, for example, because I started 5 or 10 hours into that game and I was like, no, this is way too much for me. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting notifications thrown at my face from every direction. But I would say if you've played through Forsaken, and like you've played that story and everything, you're in a pretty good place to be able to play Shadowkeep and kind of catch up on that story, and then play the Europa stuff, and really just play it at almost a leisurely pace if you want to, and not necessarily push yourself into feeling like you need to play everything and do everything. And if you want to keep up with the lore and the story and what's going on, there are plenty of places that you can get lore recaps and kind of story recaps, and you can pick up on that so that you can enjoy what's going on while you're playing without necessarily needing to follow the story really, really closely in game. But I also feel like Bungie's doing a really good job at making, and it again, actually, to the Cosmodrome, why the Cosmodrome is a separate area is because they're making it a really good place where you can come into the Cosmodrome. It's its own little bubble. It's its own little thing that's going on, that then the players come from the Cosmodrome into the tower at the current point in the Destiny story. So they're here, and this is what's going on in the Destiny storyline, and you're a new Guardian jumping into where we're at within the Destiny world. And
your power level is relevant. There's very few things that you would have a hard time doing currently right now, like because you'd come in at 1050. The only thing that you'd have a problem with is if you went to Europa. But I mean, just playing through, if it, like to his point, if you just played, if you played through Forsaken, and then you've got some stuff, and you'll start getting some of your blues and purples pretty soon, and then you go play the Shadowkeep campaign. By the time you get done playing the Shadowkeep campaign, whatever's going on in Europa won't be a problem for you from a power level standpoint, just from playing the game. That squishy feeling of like under-leveled feeling is gone, which again, your sidebar, like that's some of the best feels of Destiny that I have, is like when I'm playing through new content and I'm not just steamrolling it because like I'm on level. But you can start getting some of that, the mechanic heavy activity, and if it's something like, Josh, if you want to play, like I can play on Xbox with you. I can kind of walk you through some of the stuff. There's the foundation of Destiny is to shoot things in the head.
Yeah,
to shoot things in the critical spot, and it's it's still there. It's always going to be there. There's a deep level of where you can start getting into some of the mods and doing some of that stuff, and then there's a deeper level of like how fast you get your super or how fast you get your grenade, and then there's another even deeper level of doing a build of like, oh, if I punch this thing, I get charged with light, and and then now with my charge with light, I do this, and there's definitely levels to that, but none of those levels gonna hinder your ability to enjoy the game. They just kind of are like an extra thing to do. Like, hey, that's really cool. Like I can do ABC and I can walk up to this thing and one punch it. Like it's so like Hawkmoon is so much fun when you get like 6 or 7 charges up, and then you just walk up to this yellow bar and just shoot it and see like a 30k come from a kinetic. It's from primary gun, or you one shot somebody in the stomach in Crucible, which doesn't bother me because even if I get one shot by Hawkmoon, because it doesn't bother me because like, all right, dude had to get 5 headshots, not reload and kill me. Okay, cool. You can have your fun. Like.
Well, and on a story side of things too, just like understanding what's going on with Destiny, even as a player again that's caught up and knows everything that's going on in general, it's still really exciting to me to be able to have somebody make some passive comment within a mission or something like that, or maybe there's a lore tab on a piece of armor that's really interesting and something comes up, and then I want to go in and jump in like, oh, who's that character or that situation or something like that.
Or to hear Crow hint at, I think I'm starting to understand why people don't like me. What?
Yeah, and so you get to explore some of that stuff even more. So even if you don't fully understand, you're jumping into Shadowkeep, you don't understand what's going on in that campaign, Eris Morn says something to you about the pyramids and the darkness, and you're like, okay, what's the pyramids? There are so many resources out there for exploring the lore and getting into it. And again, maybe that's like overwhelming to you, me even saying that like, oh, now I need to jump into lore. You don't need to. But the benefit is there where if something intrigues you, if something perks you up and you're like, oh, I'm interested in that, I want to know more about that, the community resources around Destiny are so there's
or just finding your friend like you or me, that or even somebody that maybe doesn't play, and like, all right, let me jump in, like, oh cool, like, are you gonna be on tomorrow night? Like, let me jump on, I'll help you a little bit and we'll talk, and I'll kind of explain some things.
Hop on Twitter and be like, hey, what's going on with this? What's going on with this story point? What does he mean by this? And the Destiny community is amazing in that, and that's a big thing of it for me too, is that it's such a community thing, and I have so much more fun when I'm playing Destiny with people. That if I didn't have groups and friends and people that I knew that played Destiny 2, I don't know that I would play it as much.
Continue playing it as much.
Yeah.
And then Stephen Wren writes, this might be a strange question, but for someone who has never played Destiny, where would they start? And I kind of answered this a little bit, and I told them I'd go a little bit more in depth. So in terms of the barrier of entry for Destiny right now, I think that they've done a fantastic job of eliminating that. The game is free to play. Yeah. So just download it. Like Chandler mentioned a couple times, like they've done with Beyond Light's update, you immediately get put on the Cosmodrome, and the Cosmodrome is from Destiny 1, and it's the origin story of like how you're a guardian, and then you're kind of taught like, okay, here's a gun, okay, here's your second gun, and then here's your third gun, and the game is kind of like giving you this stuff. And I think I've heard like it's like a 30 or 45 minute like process to go through the beginnings of it
can be up to a couple hours that you're before you ever even leave the Cosmodrome, because it teaches you like what a strike is. It takes you through that old reprise strike. It takes you through that's right, that's who Navota is from the reprise strike. But it takes you through that based on the story of this other guardian that you meet, Shawhan, who's on the Cosmodrome, and it holds your hand a lot better than it used to. The one that they introduced with Shadowkeep was like, hey, you're a new guardian, 5-minute mission, dumps you in the tower, and you're like, what do I do now? So you'll still get that feeling when you get dumped in the tower. Don't get me wrong. It is going to be overwhelming when you just kind of get.
But I feel like you get that feeling from almost any game when you're jumped into the hub space.
Yeah.
When they finally drop you in the hub space of a living game, like whether it's the Division and going to the capital, or or whatever it happens to be, Avengers going to the base, like as you're doing that, like there's a lot of overwhelming aspects that happen to it. But that opening quest line, and again, not having played it but seeing some stuff, and you get introduced to the leveling system pretty easily. They kind of talk to you about like looking at the number and increasing your number and learning if you like the gameplay. And then you get to the tower, like Chandler mentioned, and you're still a free-to-play player. You haven't hit a paywall yet. You're not going to really hit a paywall. You can go mess around in PvP and play against other people. You can go into strikes and run those strikes and figure out, like, start fighting bosses and figuring out, like, when's the best time to use your super and when's a good time to do damage and, you know, and how that works. You'll be playing with other people that might have things you might see them do that you're like, hey, that's really cool. And that can be something that you can eventually earn. And you can also go mess around in Gambit and just stab yourself in the eye. I mean, Gambit might be a thing that you really like. You know, that's kind of a PvE PvP hybrid.
Yeah, if I'd never played Gambit before, Gambit is something at the time it came out that I really enjoyed. We just haven't really seen updates to it in 2 years.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so I mean, and that can give you a feel, and if that's something that you like, hopefully along the way you've, you know, ran into some people, or you know, you have, you know, at least in your case, Stefan, you have access to an amazing community. A small portion of that community does play Destiny, and I think if you ask them for help, I know somebody like myself or like Willie or any of these people that are in our community actively playing Destiny, they'll help, and then, you know, they'll join, and if there's something specific that you want, then, you know, we'll do and see what we can get to help you get that, and if it makes it that you decide that you want to purchase the content, then they'll be, you know, you can help you catch up, you know, but and I say catch up, like you wouldn't really need to catch up. You would just need to get through the campaign to have access to more stuff. So
yeah, and then from there, it's really good. Again, talking about the community resources, it's really good where if you're exploring around and you just kind of want to figure out what stuff is, and you're like, wow, what is this? You can typically like Google anything about Destiny and find community resources about it that will,
and it knows what you're doing when you start typing it into your phone. It knows what you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, Destiny's a huge thing, and yeah, if you're looking to just get started, I mean, that's really the way to go, is just figure out if you like it, figure out if it's something that you want to keep engaging with. Do you enjoy the gameplay? Are you enjoying building up this Guardian and collecting this gear and the abilities and the space magic? And then from there, that's when you can start looking into, okay, do I want to buy the Forsaken campaign, the Shadowkeep campaign,
which at this point in time I would just say not to. I would just look at Beyond Light and just move forward from there.
Yeah, but, yeah, it's almost even more worth it with the way that they're telling the ongoing story and kind of pushing things forward, and just kind of go from where it currently is, because as part of the narrative, it works anyway, because new Guardians are being raised every day, and they kind of come into the story at the world state at its current point, and that if you just kind of consider yourself there, you're good to go.
Right.
But yeah, like Dave said earlier, it's some of the best gunplay, first-person gameplay, hands down. Like, so much fun.
And then, like, the cool part with the free-to-play aspect of it, if you don't like it, just delete it and move on. Like, and there's really no loss. Like, if you're not, like, I'll tell you this right now, if you play through that first mission, or you play for 3 or 4 hours, and you get to the tower, and you maybe run some strikes or play some Crucible matches, and you're saying, you know what, I'm not really liking this, maybe I'll buy Beyond Light and see if that'll make it better. It won't. Like, if you've played through that much of it and you're like, hey, you know what, this isn't really grabbing me, like, doing that is not gonna, unless you're like 100% like story driven person, like, it's not gonna really get any better. You know, like, Destiny is Destiny. What Beyond Light is more Destiny right now. It's kind of like what Chandler was saying with content bloat, you know,
with excellent story, you know, dressed up over the top of it, but it still is, it's just Destiny, which is great for a lot of people, but for some people, it's not going to sell you on it.
All right. So not too bad, about a little under 2 hours. So again, Chandler, thank you so much for taking the time. I will have all of the things for people to follow and send Chandler feedback in the show notes. If you want to do any plugging, feel free to plug.
I'm on Twitter at FinchStrife, and then the website, PlayStationLifestyle.net, and it's at PS Lifestyle. I think there's no underscore. Yeah, just at PS Lifestyle on Twitter. Okay. Yeah. I occasionally do Destiny content there too, but my readers don't typically latch onto it as much as I would like them to. But
yeah, it seems like they just go where, you know, they go where they're comfortable going. They go back to the same people over and over again.
Paul
I
Tassi,
ran
Forbes.
Yeah.
He's getting all
I
his
ran
stuff.
into some of the same problems for a little while too, but again, I like to do these, like it's kind of cool. It's our own gig, so I can do my own thing, and to talk to Chandler once every, maybe I'll try to do it more than every 6 months. But
Every 6 or
like
7 months, yeah.
I said we got some really good feedback from you guys before that you really like this. 2021 is a little bit of a heavier focus on DDG's content, growing the content, expanding the content, trying to grow wider, not just keep pushing the weekly train farther and farther down the tracks. So as always, any feedback that you guys have would be always appreciated. Again, if this is your first time listening, please consider listening to our other episodes. There's a bunch of links in the show notes to other things where you can find us: YouTube channels, Twitch, Twitters, all of those things. And then if you're able to leave us a review, that's super helpful. And maybe give us a listen and a subscribe. That'd be great. Other than that, I hope everyone enjoyed that. And like I said, hopefully I can have Chandler on again.
Maybe
even
not
on the weekly
for Destiny things, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't. If PlayStation decides to actually release some types of news, like the PS5 came out and it's there and it's there, like it's nothing like substantially super, like if we have something relevant to talk about, like a very valid state of play, like he's the go-to person. Like he's been with a PlayStation focused site for quite a long time,
almost 9 years.
Definitely, definitely check out his content. He's a phenomenal writer, way better than I ever even could come close to being.
Thank you.
And his whole team, like that, they do some amazing work, and they're on the ball, like in terms of like when things come out. So definitely, if you're not checking that stuff out already, please go ahead and check that stuff out. And I hope everyone has a great week and keep moving forward. Thanks again, Chandler.
Thank you.